Welcome to English Speaking YouTube channel.
Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm so happy to have you here with us today. Whether you're at home, on a walk, or just relaxing, we're excited to spend this time with you. It's great to see so many people who are eager to improve their English. Thank you for being here and for your support. Now, I know that learning a new language can sometimes feel like a big challenge. But guess what? We're here to make it easier, more fun, and most importantly, more effective. Whether you're just starting or you've been studying for a while, you'll find something useful in today's episode. Today, we're going to talk about something very special. Think in English, improve your speaking. I know this sounds interesting, right? Many of you might wonder, how can thinking in English help me speak better? Well, that's exactly what we're going to explore today. I'm Agnes, and alongside me is my amazing co-host, Jasper. Jasper, do you want to tell everyone what we're going to talk about today?
Hi everyone, it's so great to be here with you today. I'm Jasper, and just like Agnes said, we have a fantastic topic lined up for you. Today's topic is super important because it's all about thinking in English. I know that sounds like a big idea, but it's actually one of the best ways to improve your English speaking skills. So Agnes, why do you think thinking in English is so important?
Great question, Jasper. The reason why thinking in English is so important is simple. It helps us stop translating from our native language. You see, when we translate words or phrases in our head, it takes extra time, and that can slow us down when we speak. But when you start to think in English, you start to speak more naturally, just like a native speaker. It's like learning to ride a bike. At first, you need training wheels, right? You have to think carefully about what you're doing. But as you get better, the bike just feels natural. You don't need to think so much about the steps. Speaking in English works the same way. The more you practice thinking in English, the more natural it becomes. So today, we're going to share tips on how to train your brain to think in English and how this will really improve your speaking skills. It might sound challenging at first, but don't worry, we'll make it fun and easy to understand. This is something that every English learner can do, and with practice, you'll see amazing results. But before we dive deeper into the topic, I want to take a moment to thank everyone who's watching or listening to this podcast. Whether you're just starting to learn English or you've been practicing for years, you are doing an incredible job. Keep going, and remember, every step you take brings you closer to your goal.
Exactly, and to everyone who's listening today, I want to say thank you so much for joining us. We truly appreciate your time and commitment to improving your English skills. It's not always easy, but just by listening to this podcast, you're already taking a huge step forward. Now, Agnes, you mentioned that thinking in English is like riding a bike. That's a great analogy. But what do you think is the first step to getting started with thinking in English? I think a lot of people might find this part tricky, especially if their native language is very different from English. What's your advice for them?
That's a really great question, Jasper. Yes, when your first language is very different from English, it can feel a little intimidating. But trust me, it's not impossible. The first step is surrounding yourself with English as much as possible. You don't have to live in an English-speaking country to do this. You can listen to podcasts like this one, watch English movies, or read books in English. The more you hear and see English, the easier it will be to start thinking in it. Another important thing to remember is that you don't have to be perfect right away. At first, you might still think in your native language a little bit, and that's completely okay. Just try to increase the amount of time you spend thinking in English each day. Even if it's just for a few minutes, it makes a huge difference. For example, when you're walking to the store, try to think about what you're doing in English. Instead of thinking, I need to buy bread, try to think, I need to buy bread in the store. It's a small change, but it's a start. And remember, this doesn't mean you need to stop using your native language altogether. It's all about balance. You can still use your first language, but try to add more English into your daily life. This way, over time, you'll begin to feel more comfortable thinking and speaking in English without needing to translate every word.
I love that advice, Agnes. So true. The more English you expose yourself to, the easier it will become to think in English. And like you said, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, but with practice, it will feel more natural. And here's the thing, when you start thinking in English, it helps you speak more confidently. When you don't have to pause and translate in your head, your thoughts flow more smoothly, and your speech becomes more fluent. And fluency is the goal, right? To speak English like it's second nature. That's why today's topic is so exciting. Because when you learn to think in English, your speaking ability grows faster. So let's keep going and explore more ways you can train your brain to think in English.
Thank you, Jasper. You're absolutely right. Thinking in English is the key to speaking more confidently and fluently. Now, let's dive deeper into some practical tips on how to start thinking in English. These tips are simple but effective, and they will help you move from just understanding English to truly thinking in English. So, as Jasper mentioned earlier, one of the best ways to start thinking in English is by surrounding yourself with English. But it's not just about listening to English or watching movies. It's also about interacting with the language. The next tip is to talk to yourself in English. I know it might sound a bit funny at first, but trust me, this is incredibly helpful. You can start by describing what you're doing throughout the day. For example, if you're washing the dishes, you can think or say to yourself, I'm washing the dishes. I need to scrub the plates carefully. The soap smells good. By speaking to yourself, you are engaging with the language actively. This practice helps you organize your thoughts in English rather than translating from your native language. I remember when I first started practicing this, I used to talk about simple things like, I'm going to the store, or I'm making dinner. It felt a little awkward at first, but over time, I started to feel more comfortable using English in my day-to-day life. This is exactly what you need to do to train your brain.
I love that tip, Agnes. Talking to yourself in English might feel strange at first, but it's such a powerful way to practice. It also helps you get used to hearing your own voice speaking English, which can boost your confidence. And don't forget, you can do this in any situation. Whether you're at home, at work, or even when you're out for a walk, you can practice by describing your surroundings. For example, the weather is nice today. The sky is blue, and the sun is shining. This is another great way to start thinking and speaking in English more naturally. Now, another important technique is to keep an English journal. Writing helps you organize your thoughts and express yourself clearly. You don't have to write long essays, just jot down a few sentences each day. You can start with simple things like, today I went to the park and met a friend. We had a great conversation. The key here is to use your journal as a way to practice thinking in English, not just writing in English. Try to write your thoughts in English without worrying too much about grammar or spelling. This way, you're focusing on getting your ideas out quickly, just like you would in a real conversation. For example, if you're reflecting on your day, instead of writing in your native language first and then translating, write directly in English. This simple practice will help you form ideas in English, which will then make speaking in English a lot easier.
Exactly, Jasper. And I can't stress enough that it's okay to make mistakes while you're practicing. That's part of the learning process. When you're writing in your journal or talking to yourself, it's important to let go of the fear of making errors. Over time, you'll notice that your brain will start to make the connections faster, and soon you'll be able to speak without needing to think as much about the structure or words. Another fantastic technique is to use English in your thoughts during daily tasks. For example, When you're getting ready in the morning, try to think in English about your plans for the day. You can think, I need to get dressed, have breakfast, and then go to work. It might sound simple, but these small actions help you get used to thinking in English throughout the day. Eventually, you'll find that English is on your mind more often, and it will feel more natural to think and speak in it. And let's not forget, when you immerse yourself in English, you'll also pick up new vocabulary. For instance, when you're thinking about what to wear or what to cook, you'll find yourself thinking about English words for clothes, food, or activities. This way, you're constantly expanding your vocabulary, which will only help you become a stronger speaker.
I love these ideas, Agnes. And what you said about immersing yourself in English is so true. It's not just about learning new words, it's about thinking like a native speaker. When you're immersed in a language, it becomes a part of your life. Just like in your example of getting ready in the morning, when English starts to become part of your thoughts, you'll feel much more comfortable using it in conversations. Another great way to practice thinking in English is through watching TV shows or movies without subtitles. I know this might seem difficult at first, especially if you're an elementary or intermediate learner. But I promise, even if you don't understand every word, this will help train your brain to process English in a natural way. You can start by watching familiar shows that you already know, and then try to pick up on the context or body language to understand what's happening. Over time, you'll start to understand more, and your brain will get better at thinking in English without relying on translations.
That's a fantastic suggestion, Jasper. Watching TV shows or movies without subtitles is a fun way to expose yourself to natural English conversations. You'll hear real-life expressions, slang, and common phrases that native speakers use every day. It's a wonderful way to get used to the rhythm and flow of the language. And speaking of natural conversations, have you ever thought about having a conversation with a language partner or a friend who speaks English? This is one of the best ways to practice thinking in English. Even if your partner is at a similar level to you, practicing together will help you improve faster. Don't worry about making mistakes, just focus on expressing your thoughts. The more you practice speaking with others, the easier it will be to think in English.
Exactly. Speaking with a language partner is one of the fastest ways to improve. And it's also a great way to gain more confidence. When you're talking to someone, even if they're a beginner too, it's easier to practice without feeling self-conscious, you see. And also learn from each other. Just remember, the key is consistency. Try to speak in English every day, even if it's just for a few minutes. The more you practice, the more fluent you'll become, and the easier it will be to think in English. These are just some of the many ways you can start thinking in English and improve your speaking skills. It might feel hard at first, but with patience and practice, you'll get there. You don't have to be perfect, and you definitely don't need to speak like a native speaker right away. Just keep practicing, and soon you'll notice a huge difference in your fluency and confidence.
That's why today's topic is so exciting. Because when you learn to think in English, your speaking ability grows faster. So let's keep going and explore more ways you can train your brain to think in English. Now, let's dive a little deeper into how you can make thinking in English part of your daily routine. We've already talked about some great methods like talking to yourself and keeping a journal. But another wonderful technique is to set small language goals for yourself. Setting goals gives you something to work towards and keeps you motivated. For example, you can set a goal to think in English for at least 10 minutes each day. Maybe you start by thinking about your plans for the day or reflecting on what you did yesterday. But you should make it a habit. When you make this a regular part of your routine, it starts to feel more natural. You can also try setting specific goals like learning 5 new words each day or writing a short diary entry in English. These small, manageable goals will help you build your confidence and get you closer to fluency. Another way to keep improving is to repeat words and phrases you hear. This might sound simple, but repetition is a powerful tool for language learning. If you hear a new word or phrase while watching a movie or listening to a podcast, try repeating it aloud. This helps reinforce the language in your memory and gives you more comfort when you're speaking. You'll find that over time, these words and phrases will start to come to you more easily in conversations.
That's such a great point, Agnes. Setting small, realistic goals really helps break down the language learning process into something manageable. If you set small goals, you don't feel overwhelmed and you can actually see your progress. Also, repeating words and phrases is so important because it helps make them stick. Sometimes we hear new words but forget them quickly because we don't practice them enough. But when you repeat them, your brain starts to remember and use them more naturally. And speaking of repetition, there's another great technique that can help you think in English: shadowing. Shadowing is a method where you listen to native speakers and as they speak, you try to repeat what they say as closely as possible. This can be done with podcasts, TV shows, or even speeches. The goal is to mimic the speaker's rhythm, intonation, and pronunciation. It's a fantastic way to improve your speaking skills and train your brain to think in English. Shadowing doesn't just improve your pronunciation. It also helps you get used to the sounds and flow of English. You'll notice that when you practice shadowing regularly, you'll start to speak more fluently and sound more natural. So, Agnes, have you ever tried shadowing? I think it's one of the best ways to get better at speaking quickly.
Yes, Jasper, I've tried shadowing, and I can honestly say it's one of the most effective techniques for improving speaking skills. What I love about shadowing is that it makes you feel like you're really living the language. It's not just about repeating words, it's about understanding how the language works in real-life conversations. The rhythm and the way native speakers use intonation are things that you won't always find in textbooks. Shadowing brings that real-world experience into your learning. One tip for shadowing is to start with short clips. Choose a short video or a short section of a podcast and repeat after the speaker. Focus on pronunciation first, and then work on understanding the meaning. Once you're comfortable with short clips, you can gradually move to longer ones. The more you practice, the easier it will get to mimic the flow of the language. Another helpful tip is to try shadowing in a variety of contexts. Listen to different kinds of speakers, like news presenters, movie characters, and everyday people. Each of them speaks a bit differently, and this will help you become more flexible in how you speak. If you're interested in casual conversations, you can listen to friends talking in movies or TV shows. For more formal language, you could shadow news broadcasts or speeches. This variety will give you a wider range of vocabulary and expressions to use in your own conversations.
That's such great advice, Agnes. Shadowing really helps you get closer to sounding like a native speaker because it allows you to imitate how native speakers naturally express themselves. It's like getting a sneak peek into the way they think and speak. And I love how you mentioned using different types of speakers. This can make learning even more fun and dynamic. It keeps things interesting, and you're constantly learning new ways to express yourself. Now, let's talk about the importance of patience and self-compassion in this journey of thinking in English. It's easy to get frustrated when you don't see immediate results. But remember, learning a language is a marathon, not a sprint. It's perfectly normal to feel like you're not making progress every day. The key is keep going, even when it feels difficult. Every time you think in English, you're getting better. Every time you practice, even for just a few minutes, you're moving closer to your goal. So, be kind to yourself. Celebrate the small victories. Maybe today you thought in English for just 5 minutes, but tomorrow you'll aim for 10. Maybe today you learned 5 new words, but tomorrow you'll try using them in a conversation. Language learning is all about progress, not perfection. The more you practice, the more you'll grow. And remember, every time you make a mistake, you're learning something new.
That's a really great question, Jasper. Yes, when your first language is very different from English, it can feel a little intimidating. But trust me, it's not impossible. The first step is surrounding yourself with English as much as possible. You don't have to live in an English-speaking country to do this. You can listen to podcasts like this one, watch Absolutely, Jasper. I couldn't agree more. It's so important to be patient with yourself and enjoy the learning process. Every time you make a mistake, remember, it's a step forward. Don't let the small setbacks stop you from continuing. This is a long journey, but the rewards are worth it. You'll not only improve your speaking skills, but you'll also feel more confident and comfortable expressing yourself in English. And that's the ultimate goal. Write movies or read books in English. The more you hear and see English, the easier it will be to start thinking in it. So, to all of you listening, I want to remind you that you're doing great. Whether you've been learning English for a few months or a few years, every effort you put in is valuable. Keep practicing, keep thinking in English, and most importantly, enjoy the journey.
I totally agree, Agnes. And I just want to thank everyone who has joined us for today's podcast. You're all doing an amazing job, and we're so proud of you for continuing to improve your English skills. Remember, thinking in English isn't something that happens overnight. It takes time, but with consistent practice, you will see incredible progress. We hope you enjoyed today's discussion and that it gave you some useful ideas on how to start thinking in English and improving your speaking. Keep practicing, keep challenging yourself, and most of all, enjoy the process. We believe in you and we know you can do it.
That's right. So, to everyone listening, thank you for being part of this podcast today. We hope you feel inspired to keep practicing, keep learning, and keep improving your English skills. Remember, it's all about thinking in English, and with time, you'll get better and better. We wish you all the best in your language learning journey. Take care and happy learning.
Absolutely. Best wishes to all of you, and thanks again for tuning in. We believe in your ability to succeed, and we're excited to see you grow as English speakers. Keep it up, and never stop learning. Goodbye for now, and good luck with your English journey.